The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. Let's talk about it. 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 On the Vera.
Hello, hello, hello. I am so excited today, but I say that every week, don't I? I am. I'm excited. I'm excited about my guest, Miss Cathy Derksen, and I am going to pull her up. How are you today, Cathy?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me.
I am so glad that you are here. And before we even get started, I want to ask our audience to please lift up the city of Udiva. Well, this is a city in Texas where 14 elementary school kids were just killed today by an 18-year-old. So please lift that family up and lift up the families in Buffalo, New York, who are burying their family from being killed. And both of these victims, all of these victims, were as a result of an 18-year-old. So please, I pray that you lift these families up and pray for this country, that this hatred will stop, that love will replace the hatred, that faith will replace the doubt. Please, we must pray for our country or we're going to implode. So I just wanted to say that before we get started. And now, on a more positive note, I am so glad you're here. And I'm going to take a few minutes and share your bio. Cathy is founder of her company, Inspired Tenacity. She is dedicated to helping women take on major challenges and transitions in life. Her mission is to create a cycle of wealth and success among women around the world. After working as a financial planner for over a decade, she left her corporate job and started Inspired Tenacity to focus on helping women create wealth and success on their own terms. Cathy is a speaker and a 7-time best-selling author who inspires her audience to dream big. She has created a platform for people to share their stories in multi-author books. So thank you for being here. And I am going to give you the floor to kind of share with our audience a little more about you. What inspired you to build your company, Inspired Tenacity? And then we're going to talk about the books, but just kind of share your story and let the audience know a little bit more about Cathy Derksen.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here. And yeah, my story, I guess it goes back about 12 years now when I really started this evolution, I like to call it. And that's when my kids were both teenagers. I was suddenly come to the realization that my marriage was extremely toxic. We were living in just our lives had become extremely toxic and abusive. And I got to the point where I just recognized we need to get out of here. For myself, but especially for my kids. I recognized that both of them were also dealing with the toxic environment that we were in. And each of them as teenagers was doing their own way of coping with that sort of thing that yeah, I just knew I needed to get us all out of there. And so I like to describe it like I threw my life up in the air and reinvented it on the way back down. And that's when I really started to do a lot more digging into what am I supposed to be doing with my life. At that time, I had actually been working in medical genetics. I worked in that for about 25 years. So that was my original career. I was a biologist, genetics, working mainly in hospital labs and public education, which I love. But in the middle of this big transition in my life, stopped to think, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this a position that really fits who I am and what I need to be doing? And that was when it really occurred to me that I am a people person, and that so much of what brings me joy and makes me feel fulfilled is when I'm actually dealing or working directly with people. And of course, in working in a hospital lab, you don't see many people. You get samples, they come in, they go out, and there's really very little people interaction. So I realized that I needed to make that change in my life too. So like I said, I literally threw my life up in the air and reinvented it. So left my marriage, left my job, went into a completely different career. So again, at that time thinking, what am I supposed to be doing? And I felt a calling that women needed help. There were so many of us going through divorce, and many women finding themselves alone, and especially dealing with finances, that they weren't sure what choices to make. They didn't feel that they had the support and the information to make big choices like that when they're going through a major transition. And so I felt a calling that going into financial planning was how I could help more women to actually improve their situation. And in my intro, Vera, you read my mission, and that was to create a cycle of wealth and success among women around the world. And that mission actually came to me back then. So that's been over 10 years now. And that's where my work in financial planning fit in. I thought I'll help them understand their finances, have the tools, have the support to make good financial decisions. And so I got all those credentials, all the experience, and spent over a decade doing that. And I loved helping people with that because it is part of life that we all need to learn. But I really came to realize that a lot of what controls our success, whether it's financial or in other things, it's really more about our mindset and what we feel are the limitations that we're living in, what we feel are the opportunities we have available to us. So being a financial planner and giving someone all the information and tools they needed didn't actually change their life in a lot of situations. So I found that when people had the thoughts in their head that, oh, I'm always broke, this is always a struggle, I can never save, I'm always going to be in debt. As long as you're telling yourself those stories all the time, then that is the truth. And it's very difficult to break out of that truth until you change how you're approaching it and what you're thinking yourself. Again, going back to what your thoughts on your limits and your opportunities. And so that was one of the big things that pushed me to get out of my corporate world, was that understanding that I'm approaching things at an angle that's not really helping. So that's where I came with Inspired Tenacity. In my opinion, that's a couple of the things that we really need to make big changes in our life. First, we need that inspiration. What do you want? But then we need the tenacity to just keep at it till we get there. And the other word that I always like to mention that I feel fits in the middle is courage. So you need the inspiration and the courage to take that leap of faith and do it. And then you need the tenacity to just keep at it, no matter what it's going to take to get to where you're trying to get to. So that was kind of what led me in that path. And I'm finding now that it's just so much, I love doing my own thing in that I can really focus on what somebody needs. So for some people, it is just more understanding about how to manage their finances or their budgets. But in most cases, it is around the mindset. It's around those stories that you've heard your whole life. And many of them are, that come from your family. And again, they weren't trying to instill the wrong information in you. They're just passing along the messages that they got from their family. So,
Absolutely.
just the whole thing, well, there's never enough. That whole idea of lack is so prevalent in our culture. In North
Yes.
America, we're just constantly bombarded with, and of course, the advertising and that sort of thing. That's their main focus is, fear and scarcity. So, so we've grown up with this that we don't have enough. We need more. Go get more. Whatever it is. And so, trying to get people to think differently and approach things differently is more where my focus is now.
So, what would you suggest to someone who says, always is saying these things like, I'm always broke, I never have enough? Why are things like this for me? So, how do you get a person to change their mindset? Now, I know that's a part of what you do, but if you can kind of give a couple nuggets to
Yes.
kind of help someone think about how they can go about reversing their
Yes.
thoughts about finance.
Yes.
You might be helping me too.
That's right. Well, and like everything, the first thing, most important, is recognizing that there's something that needs to change. Because I think so many people are just stuck in that, but don't see it as something that they can change. So that's the first part, is that they have to get to the point where they acknowledge that they can change their situation. And one of the things, especially with women, I like to really start with is getting give yourself permission to even think about what you actually want. Because that's part of it too, that many of us have never really allowed ourselves to think, what do I want? What do I need? Where am I going? We've kind of got caught up in doing life, right back from, you finish high school, go to university, get a job, get married, have kids, then you move on to what the retirement, and what is that really even? And, we just tend to get caught up in that flow of what's going on, but we haven't really stopped to think, what do I want? What do I want next? So until you've done that part and you've really let yourself dream,
Yeah.
it is hard to move forward. It's hard to move in a different direction because you really have no direction that you're going in. You're just kind of going in circles or redoing, almost like Groundhog Day for a lot of
Right.
us. That you just keep reliving the same day over and over.
Yes. Yes.
So to me, those are the first couple steps that are critical, is that acknowledgement that you can make a change and that you want to make a change, but then just giving yourself that permission to start thinking, okay, I can change this. I can, but what do I want? How do I get there? And so it really does become that process of recognizing where we're going, what we're trying to work towards, and then reinforcing with new ideas. So, quite often people are using affirmations and mantras and that sort of thing. And quite often it is kind of replacing those thoughts, because we have these thoughts that keep going around and around and around in our heads, but it's not as easy to just eliminate them. We have to replace them. They have to be replaced
Absolutely.
by something that's a different message, or
Absolutely.
the message of what we can do.
Absolutely. And
And
when those negative thoughts come in your mind, whatever that thought is, reverse it to a positive and then speak it out loud many times
and in
over
writing,
and over again.
I find a lot of people find writing it down really helpful. Even if you just write it down and throw it out, but just something about having the pen in your hand and making that movement and
Yes.
just putting it on paper is
Yes.
amazing what that can do as well.
Yes.
And
I want to acknowledge one of our guests. Hello, Tiffany. Thank you for being here. She says, "Hi, ladies.
hello,
Thank you
Tiffany.
so much for being here. And please like, share, and comment like you're doing. Appreciate that. And if you don't mind sharing this podcast or this show as we're talking, because we've got some powerful stuff that we want to share
That's right.
for women out here. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but that we will be doing that intermittently as people come
Oh,
in and
yes.
comment. Okay.
Yes, yes. It's always
Okay.
good to acknowledge the ones that show up live.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And so, as we're saying, we're talking about writing out now. So you're suggesting to write out those negative thoughts?
No, what you're replacing them with.
Oh,
I mean, some people like to do that too. They write out the negative stuff, and sometimes they'll actually burn it or tear it up and throw it away. But definitely the reinforcing with the what you do want to replace with what you do
yes,
be thinking about it. And one of the other places I focus a lot, I work a lot with midlife women. So women in our age group, many of us have spent years and decades looking after everybody else.
yes,
We haven't really allowed ourselves or spent much time thinking again, what do I want?
yes,
And so that's a big thing for me right now, is really supporting midlife women in recognizing, for one thing, we have to plan to live into our 90s. So if
yes.
you're in your 50s and 60s, this isn't time to wind down. This
I
is time
agree.
to write the next chapter.
Absolutely,
What
I
are,
agree.
I mean, you think about it, most of us, in our 50s, 60s, 70s, many into their 80s are,
Doing it.
yeah, we've got all that experience, we've got all that wisdom, we're in a position now for sharing and, passing on what we've been doing all this time. So to me, it's time to just start a new chapter. It's time to move on to something that makes us feel this is what I came here for. This is what I'm
Absolutely,
sharing. This is what I'm doing now. And that's
absolutely.
where, again, my whole thing with Inspired Tenacity really came in, that I felt that while I was working in my corporate job, I felt I was really just, pushing their products, saying what I needed to say, but I wasn't really sharing the message that I felt I was here to do.
Yes,
And so now I have that flexibility to approach it from whatever angle I feel I need to. So again, if someone, right back to the beginning of what do you want, and then let's figure out what life's going to look like. And even now, when I'm starting to bring books into this, and
yes,
so as you mentioned, I've now got 7 books launched and hit #1, which is great. Yeah, international bestsellers are
yes.
coming up. And so my 8th book is just going to the publisher now, so it should be out in the next, hopefully by the end of June, we'll be having another successful launch on that. But my big inspiration was that a wonderful way for women to kind of move forward in life is to put their story in writing,
Yes.
to actually share their story, share what they've been through, how they got through it. Again, whether it was an abusive situation, whether it was just life getting them down, whether it was, a career that they'd spent 30 years in and realized, okay, I hate being a lawyer. I want to do something. I want to be a travel guide, but helping women to really take their story and hold on, like, create it into something. I found
Yes.
that writing books and sharing our stories was just such a powerful way to really have our stories heard, both
Absolutely.
for others where we're supporting them, but even for ourselves. The first time I put my story in writing, it was an amazing feeling. It was,
It
yeah,
was
it's hard to
cathartic, wasn't
describe.
it?
Yes, yes, especially when you really knew, not only did I write it down and it got printed, now it's out there.
Yes. But let me ask you this. As you're sharing your story, and I know that a lot of times because we're pouring our hearts out and we're sharing our stories, sometimes other people may kind of feel a certain way about you sharing your story. Have you experienced anything like that yourself?
Um, Not so much. I mean, as far as I know, my ex-husband hasn't read any of my books, so I don't, but I've always been careful as well. Like when it comes to sharing my story that does involve my kids and partially my extended family, that I really focus on my part of the
Right,
story.
right.
and not so much bring their details in, because in
Right.
my mind, that's their story to share.
Right, exactly.
So,
Exactly. And we can share things that may have happened in our lives that may have been negative without naming names
mhm,
or any of that kind of stuff, because it is a part of our story.
yes,
And sometimes there may be some resentment or some even alienation from others because you've
yes,
decided to share your story. Now, I'm saying that because I know that you're looking for authors, or you're looking for writers, people. And let me back up, because you may not be a writer, you may not be an author, but you have a story. So I know
and
you're looking for people who are willing to share their story for the next book that you're going to be working on. So you want to kind of share a little bit about what that book is about, and what, if someone wanted to be a part of it, what
mhm,
is it that you're looking for?
yes, yes. Well, I'll be doing several books going forward. The one that I'm working on right now and gathering authors for. And again, like you said, it could be someone who has published other works before, or it could be someone brand new. Again, and when I did my first book, I wasn't a writer either, but now I am.
Yes.
So the book I'm working on right now, calling it Embrace Courage. And so it's focused on people sharing their stories of a time in their life when it's taken courage. They've had to use courage to get through and beyond whatever challenge it was. For some of my authors, it was leaving their homeland and starting a whole new life in North America. For some of them, it was getting out of an abusive relationship, or starting a brand new career, or starting a business. So there's so many different examples of when we've used courage to really make big changes in our life, and how we did that, how we got through that. So that's the theme that we're working on. So we're gathering authors. Each author writes one chapter.
And
So
how many
2,000.
words?
2,000.
Okay.
So very doable. And that's one of the things I love about the multi-author books, because one chapter we can get through.
Yes.
And the way I've set up my program as well is I'm really helping people, especially new authors, get through that part. So we are doing group and one-on-one Zoom meetings where we
Oh,
sit
okay.
down, we talk about what your story is, how you want to present it. And one of the things I find with a lot of authors when we're working on, especially a chapter, quite often what we want to tell is more than what's going to fit in that chapter.
Right.
So part of it is actually cutting down, and what are you really focusing on for this chapter?
Yes.
And again, going forward, you can contribute other stories into other books and that sort of thing. Some people then jump into their own book and do a whole book of their own. That's
Yes.
a whole bigger process that a lot of people aren't quite ready for. But that's the thing that I really found, that a lot of people, like you were saying, they want to share their story, but they've never done it before. So there's like fear holding them back, or I'm not a writer, I'm not an author, I've never done that before. That's not what I do. So now that I've added this part at the beginning where we actually get together and I give you that support, we work as a group of, okay, what are you working on? What are your challenges? How can we make this flow better, and that sort of thing. So we actually create the chapters that way. Some people don't need a lot of help with that. And so, you don't have to come to these meetings and go through all of that. But if you want to, and again, it's a great way to meet the community involved. And then, so once we've got the chapters pretty much done, then we go on with my publisher has the editors that she works with. So it goes through professional editing, proofreading. It goes through all the professional formatting for the books. So there'll be a paperback book plus Kindle. Sometimes we even have got them done on Audible. So of course that takes a whole other layer of work to get that done. But the publishing company I'm working with, Action Taker Publishing, they do an amazing job with the launch. So for each author, they create all the marketing materials, and then we do a big gathering and we're all promoting it. And there's that one day that we're, really working together, and it becomes an experience.
Yes.
So, I mean, for many people, you want to be able to say that you're an international bestseller, but you also want to feel like you're involved in the
The
event.
process. Yes. Yeah.
So that's a big part of what we're doing. And because of the system that they've got set up, it's pretty much guaranteed that we will hit international bestseller.
That's awesome. Now, is that through Amazon or is that
Yes.
through?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It does get distributed other places as well, but Amazon is the big focus for that. Just
That
that.
bestseller
Yeah, exactly.
category. Yes. And one of the things, like when you said, and again, I want to encourage those of you that are listening, or you may be listening to the replay, don't fear writing a chapter. It's
Exactly.
just a chapter. Mile by mile, it may be hard, but inch by inch, it's a cinch. And what you may find as a result of writing that one chapter, you may get the bug.
That's right. And next thing you know, you've got 8 books on the go.
Right, exactly, exactly. I'm a witness.
And
So
one of the things I love about what I'm doing now with this as well is that I can create these projects. So if someone comes to me and says, I've got a group of women, we've all been through this, can we write a book about that?
there you go.
And again, we need 20 to 30 authors together to make the book big enough to be a real book. But so I can actually do that. I can fine tune a theme. We can create a new project and say, okay, I was just speaking to one of my authors today, and he moved from Africa years ago. Now he's got 4 businesses now that he's running in Canada. He's doing
Wow.
amazingly well. And so he had the idea of actually creating another book that's just immigrant stories.
That
So
would
people that
be
have left their
interesting.
homeland
Yes.
come to North America, and what their challenges in doing that, and where they are now. So it'll be both stories of challenges and stories of, hopefully triumph.
Yes, and
Another one
overcoming.
I'll be working on, probably moving into the fall. So again, if anyone's got any stories in that way, but yes, so I've got another book that I'm working on that's women in science and technology.
Okay.
So, in those careers that are kind of traditionally more male dominated, and now the special challenges they had in actually getting through their careers and establishing themselves. And so that's one of the big things, that I can create what we want.
That's awesome. So again, listening audience, if you have a desire or you think you might want to become an author, her information is scrolling at the bottom. So you can reach her at LinkedIn or her website. And so please get in touch with her and see about being a part of what she's doing, or let her help you formulate something yourself.
Exactly. And on my website, there's links there that show my current books, talk about my projects, and there's buttons for just book a meeting, and we'll just jump on Zoom like this and have a chat about your ideas. And so lots of fun.
Awesome. Now, if anyone has comments and you're trying to scroll in or write comments and I'm not seeing them, you might want to go to the Vera Thomas Show on Facebook, and that way any feedback that you want to share, because we love to hear what our audience is thinking.
Yes.
So if you go there and share some things, that would be great. All right, so let's talk. You got 7 books. So let's talk about each of those books. Now, I don't know if you have them in front of you or anything. By any chance, do you?
I could grab most of them. Let's see here.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay.
All right. All right. All right. All right. So I want you to lift each one up and just kind of give us a synopsis of what each of them is about. Okay.
I'll go in order here.
Okay.
And hopefully my background doesn't blur them out. I'll put them in front. This is my first book. So again, this is done. So Women of Worth is a local publishing group, and this is their 5th book. And so I'd heard of the books they were doing before I got involved, but again, never thought of myself as an author, and thought, well, and just wasn't ready yet. But when I heard this one come up, and so this one is the main theme is emotional intelligence. And after what I'd been through with my divorce and career changes and all those things, I felt I had something to contribute to this one. So that's what got me started. This was the beginning. And the next one's come along with the pandemic. So this one was done before just as things were getting started with the pandemic. And so in my chapter in this one, I focus, at that time I was a financial planner. At that time, when everybody else in the world, life was slowing down, people got sent home, they were off work. So most people, life was quiet. They were isolated, they were alone, they were bored, they were drinking, they were, whereas my life was the opposite. Because as a financial planner, luckily we had the tools to just shift into mobile and work from home. But I was the main point of contact for 250 people. Wow. At a time when everybody was scared, they were stressed, they were confused, the markets were crashing, mortgage rates were, or I guess the rates hadn't really changed yet, but people couldn't pay their mortgage. People didn't know what was happening next. Their investments were disappearing in front of their eyes. So you've got all these people that are alone and scared and stressed and not sure what to do. I was their main point of contact. So
you were a financial planner, counselor, coach, advisor.
Exactly. So my whole story in this, I describe it like I was in a storm. Like I'm holding the pillar in the middle while everyone else is holding on to me, and so
you felt that.
Yes. Oh, yes, exactly. And so not only was I dealing with all the chaos that we were all dealing with, but I was holding up 250 other people. And, some of them were, elderly people in seniors' homes, literally locked in their room for weeks in these isolations. And again, they were scared, they were lonely, they were confused. And I was the phone call they made. So it was a very different world for me than it was for most people.
Yes. But thank God you were there for them to be able to give them that encouragement or that uplift or to help them go through because COVID really impacted everybody's lives.
Oh, exactly.
Children, grandparents, couples. It really impacted. In fact, studies show there was more domestic violence.
Yes.
There was more alcohol abuse, drug abuse, child abuse, all these abuses.
Even our personal abuse. So I think people really weren't looking after themselves. And a lot were spiraling. And so these were my first two books with the same group. So they're both with WOW, Women of Worth. And then the third one was this one was kind of as we thought COVID was winding down and kind of how we'd made it through this turbulence and crazy times. And of course, little did we know it was just having a rest and coming back. So this was about a year ago. And so those three were my first with that one publishing group, and they were wonderful as well. So let's see. So the next one I did, Ashley, this one might disappear on me. This one is another Canadian group, but there's actually 365 women in this book from across Canada.
Wow, and 365 women? Yes.
So the way they did it, we each have one page where we have a picture. It's probably going to disappear if I open it, but
okay.
See there.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful book, like a very nice, glossy, beautiful pictures and everything. And so they launched it 2020, January 1st, 2020 was when it came out. And every single day of last year, or 2021, sorry, there was a different woman that was spotlighted. So they had a magazine as well. So every day there's a different one of us that was a spotlight, which was really, and it officially launched on International Women's Day.
Oh, wow. Well, let me ask you. So each page, was it more like a bio page or was it?
Yes. Okay. So you kind of are a very short blurb about, because again, there's only so much you can do on a single page.
Yes.
So more about kind of what you're about, what you've been up to, how you're helping other women and that sort of thing. So 365 authors from across Canada.
Okay.
Was that one. And that's a beautiful book. And then the next one I was in was with a group out of California. So actually, this is Women or Action Takers Publishing. This is the
Okay.
first book I did with them.
Okay.
So, Invisible No More, Invincible Forevermore. And so it's all story. This is all women as well, and sharing stories of a time in their life where they felt invisible, and then how they've come through that to now feel invincible.
That's awesome.
So that's a great one. And so that was my first experience with Action Takers Publishing and their whole system around creating community, of really creating a launch and a marketing system that was exciting and involved with everybody. So that was great. This one came out last August.
Okay.
And then the next one, the same Action. This is also Action Takers Publishing. And this was
I love that cover. Just really, just popped out at me. That one and the one you just showed, it just really popped that out at me. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, they're neat covers, and that's one of the other fun things too. Creating new books, we can invent the cover, the title, the cover, everything. So this was kind of an interesting project. So what they did is they had this idea that to get authors to write a chapter about a book that they read that had a big impact on their life.
Wow.
But so it's not really like it's not a book report. It's just kind of mentioning that book, but then telling your story around how that helped you. So for mine, my book that I chose was one of Brene Brown's books. So I find Brene Brown has really helped me through a lot of my kind of ups and downs, and especially over the last few years going into being an entrepreneur and taking on new careers, kind of that whole feeling of, that I'm not the only one going through this, and I'm not the only, kind of normalizing a lot of the struggles that we tend to beat ourselves up about. So so that was a neat book. This one came out January.
Okay.
January, this one came out. So, but that was a very different kind of process that we went through. Now, this is the one that just came out. So this is the only book I've done with this group. They're called Blue. Whoops, where'd it go?
Okay.
The BLU is Business, Life, and Universe.
Okay.
So all of their books have the same title. They just have a different volume number. So this is volume 6.
Okay.
And so people write a chapter about anything that fits in with business, life, or universe. So I actually did something a little different with this one. The other ones were all kind of stories of my own journey. For this one, because it was kind of that blend of business and life, my chapter is actually called Business and Butterflies.
Okay.
And I do an analogy between the process when you go, say, any kind of major transition in your life. So whether it's becoming an entrepreneur or some other big change in your life, where you really have to undergo an identity shift and take on a whole new thing. So I go through this whole description where I talk about, in my own example, I use as going from corporate to becoming an entrepreneur, starting my own business and moving on from there. And so with being an egg, like when you're in a corporate job and you've got all that potential, but you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And then you turn into the caterpillar where you're just gobbling up every bit of information, a new course you can get, and new resources and new connections. You're just like gobbling up everything as a caterpillar. But the part I really focus on was that cocoon stage. Sometimes we have this idea that the butterfly just kind of goes into a cocoon and grows wings. The caterpillar grows wings. But really what it's doing is melting down into almost nothing and then being rebuilt into this whole other creature. And so I describe that like being an entrepreneur, where you literally have to melt down your identity from before and take on a whole different who I am and what I'm about. And I think for most people going through major transitions, that's the hardest part.
Yes.
The part of acknowledging I have to walk away from who I was or what I used to do or what identified me before, because that's not who I am right now. And again, whether it's a woman walking away from an abusive marriage. So before, she identified as abused wife, but to make a transition into a new identity, she has to walk away from that. She has to
Right.
let that go. And so literally melt down, reborn, step off into your own new self. And hopefully get to the point that you spread your wings and you fly away as a beautiful butterfly.
Yes, I
So
love butterflies. I absolutely love butterflies. And when you talked about the melting down, and in so doing and leaving what you've been doing maybe forever, or the abuse that we allow ourselves to be in, then even though it might have been abusive, going away from it, you still go through those stages of grief. And
yes, yes.
so going through those stages of grief is also like that process of becoming a butterfly.
It's, and the book I'm just going to publish right now, the theme is around butterflies as well, and that's a global project with women from all over the world in that one. And in that chapter I've written in that one, I start it with embrace courage as well, and then describe kind of the different things that we go through and where courage comes in and where we stand together to support each other. And but that one, I'll show you that one next time.
Okay, okay, there will be a next time. Okay. Now, we've talked about the books that you have, and we've talked about the books that are coming. And we've also encouraged our audience to leap out on faith, contact Cathy, and get in her next book. You
Yes.
may not be an author, you may not even feel that you're a writer, but you have a story. You have a story to share, and that story is going to help somebody else. So keep in mind your story. The things that we've gone through in life, it's not for us, it's for others. It's like you made a comment recognizing that I'm not the only one that's gone through this. By sharing your story, what others, somebody else is going to realize, oh, I'm not the only one that's going through this.
Yes, and I always love to say, don't underestimate the impact your story can have on other people
Yes.
and the whole ripple effect. So even if you help one person, one other woman picks up that story and reads it and finds strength and finds a new opportunity, imagine all the people who are now going to be impacted by her by her change.
Yes.
So whether it's her kids, her coworkers, her extended family, the other people that she now reaches out to help. And going back to my mission of creating that cycle and wealth, a cycle of wealth and success among women around the world. That is my whole vision, is that ripple effect.
Yes.
So you and I are helping the women that come to us, but each of them is now reaching out and helping others
Yes.
who are reaching out and helping others.
Yes.
And it goes back to that old hair commercial of, she told two friends and she told two
Yes.
friends. But
Yes.
just that ripple effect of impact, you'll never
Yes.
know, you'll never have any idea how far that ripple effect goes.
Absolutely. And that's why when we talked about sharing your stories to build unity in the community, and you're not just talking about our communities, but you're talking a global community, because we are so closely connected no matter where we are. You're in Canada right now, but there's still that connection. And so globally, we can change the world.
Well,
We can change the world.
just in the last 2 days, I've had meetings with, today I'm speaking with a woman in India. Yesterday it was Sweden, UK, Australia, Canada, US. So you
Wow.
imagine now that we are a global family. We can sit here
Yes.
like this with people anywhere in the world, share our stories. Those books go anywhere in the world.
Yes.
And yes, we're all here together. And that's one of the other things I love about this publisher, that we go through the whole launch, we get our ranking in place, But then she releases the book to the authors as a PDF. So now you've got the book formatted and everything in a PDF that now you can share any way you want.
Wow.
So you can either just give it to other people, you can use it as a, hey, trade you your email address for this book, or, there's so many things you can do with it. But that idea of sharing your stories as widely as you can without, having to physically go order the book from Amazon. But
And you know what? That is awesome. There are not many anthologies like that.
no, exactly. That's why I've picked Action Takers Publishing, because they do everything right. I have loved working with them, and I have no complaints. So
That's
I'm going with
awesome.
them.
That is awesome. Now, the ripple effect. I love that. The ripple effect and showing how it's like each one teach one, each one inspire one,
Yes.
each one love one through the love that is being permeated through the work and the collaborations. And I love the fact that you actually have these meetings where the women come together, get to know each other, and work together to create a book that's profound. That's going to change a life.
And that's one of the things too. So every one of these books I've worked on has been a different group of authors involved. So each one of them is a new community and a new network of people that I've got to know. And it's amazing how you can extend your network and really build a community by working together on a project like this.
Yes, that is wonderful. That is absolutely wonderful. Now, we're living in some dark times, and I want you to, and we didn't talk about this before the show,
Wow.
but I trust you'll be able to do this. I want you to just kind of share with our audience, one, how you see things that are happening, and two, in addition to writing books and sharing our stories, what else would you encourage others and people to do to kind of make a difference
Mhm.
in and
Yeah.
changing the trajectory of what's happening now?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel like there's a shift. We've had a shift, and things have shifted towards a negative. So what, there was COVID, there was politics, and there's wars, and it just feels like we're shifting in that negative kind of feeling. Whereas I feel what our roles are as individuals is to create a positive energy among ourselves and spread that wider. In my mind, that's the only thing that's really going to shift the world back into a more positive situation, is that if we each as individuals create a more positive environment for ourselves and amplify that. And then again, going back to the ripple effects, as I create more positive energy around me and share a more positive message, and then reach that out to other people and create that more positive message. In my mind, that's what's going to shift things. That's the thing that is going to, like you were saying as well, that, let love replace hate, and, shine that light, and that light will, remove the darkness. And, that whole idea of that the light needs to expand, and that's how we're going to shift this. And I always like to remind people, in the media and the news especially, they have to focus on negative stories, because that's the shock effect. That's what sells, that's what gets people listening. But always to remind yourself that's not the only thing. There's so much good going on. There's so many people doing good things, but they don't make it on the news. So it gives us that twisted feeling of what's real, because we don't see those positive stories in most cases. But they're
That's
here, and if you look for them, you will find them. But the whole thing of you only see what you want to see, or you see what you're looking for. If you start looking for positive stories and
Yes.
looking for the things that people are doing right and looking for what you actually want to see, you'll find it. It's there.
Yes. Seek and you shall find.
That's right. That's right. So to me, that's it. Is we got to start with ourselves and
Yes.
work out. And one of my
Yes.
favorite quotes. Let's see. Hopefully, I get it right. But don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive.
Ooh,
Go
I
do
like
it.
that.
Because
Repeat that. Repeat that.
so don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is more people who have come alive.
Yes.
And I love that quote. And again, that sums the whole thing up, that
Yes.
you need to come alive.
Yes.
And then that will trickle out to other people who
Yes.
take that example of, okay,
Yes.
if you're feeling good and you're positive, then maybe I can do that too. And
Yes.
again, getting back to sharing your story in the book, all of my books will be focused on inspiring stories, positive stories of, obviously there will be challenges and things people have overcome. So not every piece of the story is positive, but
the outcome
and
is.
the outcome and the, even if someone hasn't come to the point that they're feel like they're out of it completely, but they're going in that direction, they're recognizing there's hope. I think hope is a huge part of it.
Yes.
That it's when we've lost
Absolutely.
hope, then that's when the negative really starts to win. So even just finding hope again, and that hope
Yes.
that things can be better and that they are getting better, and that together we can actually change what's going on in some
Yes.
places, and that just keep focusing on that. That's, again, going back to watching the news, that's one of the reasons why I try not to watch too much. I listen to the radio, I get the traffic and weather reports and a little snippet of what the economy is doing at the moment, kind of thing.
Yes. Yes. Well, I'm so glad I asked you that question.
So
I
much.
am. Yes. And so, what we all need to do, and if we start visualizing light,
Yes.
start surrounding our homes and our communities and our country and our world with light. Start
Yes.
seeing light, because where there is light, there can be no darkness.
Yes.
Light and darkness cannot live in the same space. Faith and doubt cannot live in the same space. Love and hate cannot live in the same space. So each of us, it's incumbent upon each of us to let our light shine.
Yes.
And I think about my baby sister, when she was in hospice, and I started driving Uber so I could be available for her.
Oh, wow.
And
Yes.
the very first thing that came out of her mouth when I went in her home and I said, Mary, I'm going to be driving Uber. And she's balled up on the couch, covered up. And she looked at me. And the first thing she said was, Vera, let your light shine.
Oh,
That was the first thing she said to me. And that's what I think about all the time. Let your light shine.
yes.
And each of us have that light.
Yes.
And
Exactly. And by shining it, you're giving others permission to do the same.
yes,
I love
this
that.
is so important.
Yes.
It's so important. And
I agree.
so I want to backtrack for a minute, because we do have a few minutes. And I want to just talk about, both of us have experienced being involved in domestic violence and in um, toxic, for lack of, rather than domestic violence per se,
Yes.
toxicity in our home and in our marriages, and the impact that it can have on children. And I know we're not going to get into like the personal stuff because that's their story, as you said. But just, I want parents to recognize the impact that we, that happens to our children when we stay in those environments. And so oftentimes someone will say, well, I stayed because of my kids. No, no. Staying can damage a child, can cause them to have all kinds of um, residual
Yes. Yes.
negativities.
Eats away at their confidence and who they are as a person. And I know, I mean, my son probably wouldn't mind if I share some of his story, and that, he was a teenager while we were living in that very, very toxic environment. And his relationship with my ex-husband was extremely toxic and getting volatile to the point that where it was heading was scary. But the scariest part was that my son had, just out of that frustration and anger that had come from being in that environment, had, and again, that kind of cutting down on your self-esteem of who am I if this is how I get treated at home kind of feeling.
Yes.
And so he started hanging around with the wrong kids, doing stuff he shouldn't have been doing, getting himself in trouble, getting himself arrested. There was days that I didn't know if the phone rang, he could be dead or in jail at any time. Like, that's the direction he was going. And now, like, just getting him out of that, now he is the most independent kid in his, like, of his peer group, that even the ones that were the good kids back in school, he is so far beyond them in career right now. He has created a career where he now is helping young people get out of trouble, where he's helping to, be that advocate for either both young people and disability that don't have a voice. So now he has taken on that caretaker, that's, looking out for them, creating a safer space for them. So,
wow, that's awesome.
So,
from pain to purpose.
but if I hadn't got us all out of that, I'm sure he would be dead or in jail right now.
Wow.
And then I probably would be too, because then I'd be doing something to protect him.
Yes.
But he's a perfect example of where he was when he was in that toxic, angry, just volatile environment, when you can't get away from it because it's at home and it's in the streets and you're just in it.
Yes.
You need a safe place to call home.
Yes.
So then to get him out of that and into an environment where he could be quiet, he could feel safe, he could feel in some control. And again, like I said, he has completely turned his life around. He's completely shifted into now a young man who is doing everything he can to go in the right direction and to help others take control of their life as well. So, I mean, he's a perfect example of when you stay and when you go.
Yes. That's perfect. I really wanted to kind of say something because there may be someone that's either listening now or will be listening to the replay and understand it's not to the benefit of your children to stay in a toxic environment. And it's not to the benefit of you either.
And so just that feeling of what role model are you? What are you showing them as good and normal and a family? Is that what a family role model should be?
Right. And when awareness precedes change. So if you can be aware of the impact that it's having on you and your children, then you can find the courage to make that change. Now, we're almost out of time, believe it or not. I do want to say something about the camp. I have 4 summer camps coming up in June for 8 to 12-year-olds to help build confidence and self-esteem, to address the issue of bullying, to give some presentation skills, and these kids will be able to see their transformation from day 1 to day 5 because it will be videotaped, it's online. And so each day we're going to review what we did the day before, and they'll be able to see their progress. So please go to bit.ly.greatness 2022 and sign up for this class camp for your children 8 to 12 years old. I'm excited about what we're going to be doing and the impact that it's going to have on these children's lives. So, Cathy, it has been a pleasure having you here today. And one other thing, you talked about working with middle-aged and senior women. What I want to say about that, you're either green and growing or ripe and rotten. So what do you choose to be? And it's not about age. It's about mindset.
Yes.
It's about attitude. So are you green and growing or ripe and rotten? I'm going to leave you with that tonight. All right. So Cathy, thank you again for being here. Thank you, listening audience. And please share this broadcast with others because it will be on LinkedIn, YouTube, and also on Facebook on the Vera Thomas Show. So with that, Cathy, I'm going to ask you to stick around for a minute, okay? All right, thank you. And again, thank you, listening audience, for being here. And we will see you again next week. God bless. And remember, let your light shine. Let your light shine. God bless. Bye-bye.
The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. Let's talk about it.